On Christmas Eve, I came home without warning. I found my daughter shivering outside at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. No blanket to keep her warm. My son-in-law's family was laughing, toasting with champagne by the fireplace. I kicked the door open, holding my daughter in my arms, and said 6 words. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing my revenge story from. I want to know how far it's reached. I stepped out of the taxi. My heavy boots sank into the thick layer of snow outside my daughter's house in Boise, Idaho. The icy wind slapped my face like it wanted to peel my skin off, forcing me to pull up the collar of my coat. After years as a Taekwondo coach, I thought I was used to any challenge, from the sweltering heat of the dojo to the harshest winters. But this Christmas Eve cold made me shiver. I stood there, in front of the warmly lit house, a mix of excitement and nerves swirling inside me. Today, I wanted to surprise Emily. I wanted to see my little girl's radiant smile when her mom showed up out of the blue. After so many months away, the front yard was buried in snow, not a single footprint in sight, like no one cared enough to clear it. Through the big picture window, I could see the cozy glow spilling out from the living room, where cheerful Christmas music played from a Bluetooth speaker. The song Jingle Bells, Emily's favorite when she was a kid, filled the air. I stepped closer, trying to peek inside. A long table draped in a bright red tablecloth stretched out in front of me, loaded with traditional dishes. A golden roasted turkey, steaming plates of cornbread stuffing, a bowl of cranberry salad with shiny bits of apple and raisins, and glasses of red wine glinting under the lights. The Whitlock family, my son-in-law's folks, was gathered in full. I recognized Mr. Harold Whitlock, Ryan's dad, sitting with an air of authority, and Mrs. Evelyn Whitlock, his mom, holding a glass of wine with a smug smile on her lips. Ryan's sister Abigail was there too, with her 2 young kids laughing nonstop. They were all raising their glasses, toasting around the crackling fireplace. But where was Emily? I frowned, straining to see further inside, thinking maybe she was tucked in some corner. I'd pictured her smiling, chatting happily, like in the old days when she'd wrap her arms around my neck, telling me endless stories. Then I heard a noise, a faint whimper coming from the porch. I turned, and my heart stopped. Under the dim light, next to a snow-covered poinsettia planter, Emily was curled up in an old wooden chair. She wore only a thin blouse, her frail shoulders shaking uncontrollably, her messy hair sticking to her forehead, damp from melted snow. I ran to her, my heart pounding like a drum. "Emily!" I shouted, my voice breaking with panic. I yanked off my coaching jacket and wrapped it around her with urgency. My trembling hands touched her arm. It was ice cold, like there was no warmth left in her. Emily lifted her face, her eyes red, her pale lips barely whispering, "Mom." Her voice was so faint, it almost dissolved into the air, and she collapsed against my shoulder. I hugged her tightly, feeling her body shake like a bird caught in a storm. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here," I whispered, trying to sound calm, though tears burned in my eyes. I pulled an extra sweater from my bag and wrapped it around Emily, trying to share some of my warmth. I lifted her in my arms as her soaked slippers fell into the snow, leaving a messy trail. I held her close, feeling her weak breath against my neck. In that moment, all I wanted was to get her out of there, away from the biting cold, away from whatever had brought her to this state. But then, from inside the house, the laughter kept going, careless and cruel. I clearly heard Ryan's deep voice, smug and boastful, bragging about something. The whole table erupted in laughter, and the clinking of glasses sounded like distant, eerie music. They were happy, cozy by the fireplace, while my daughter, my own flesh and blood, was trembling outside in the cold, like she didn't deserve to be in that house. Just a few hours ago, I was at the Boise airport, still sweaty from a week of coaching the national Taekwondo team. The heat of the mats seemed to linger on me, even as I stood in the chilly airport lobby. I dragged my old suitcase, so excited I could hardly stand still, imagining Emily's face lighting up when I showed up unannounced on Christmas Eve. My heart was racing. She'd always been my light, ever since she was a little girl, clinging to my legs, begging for one more bedtime story, growing into a sweet young woman whose smile could melt away my toughest days. But my job as head coach took me from place to place. Seattle, national tournaments, stealing moments with Emily. Every time I left, I told myself, just one more tournament, then I'll be with her. And now I was here, ready for a Christmas reunion I was sure would make her happy. I sat in the airport waiting area for the short drive to Boise's suburbs, pulling out my phone to call Emily. I wanted to hear her voice, make sure she was home. The phone rang and rang, each tone tightening my nerves. No answer. I frowned, thinking maybe she was busy preparing Christmas dinner with the Whitlock family. I called again, then once more, always the same. Silence. A knot of unease settled in my chest, spreading like ink on paper. I sent a text. Mom's on her way. You home? I stared at the screen, waiting for the little blue checkmark. Nothing came. I tried to shake off the bad feeling, convincing myself she'd left her phone somewhere or was distracted decorating the Christmas tree, like she did every year. The plane had landed in Boise after dark. I dragged my suitcase out of the airport, and the winter night's cold hit me hard, sinking into my skin. Families were hugging, laughing, heading to midnight mass. A dad carried his little girl on his shoulders. She held a candy cane and giggled happily. I watched them, a lump tightening in my throat. I'd carried Emily like that too, held her hand through streets twinkling with Christmas lights. But now I was alone, pulling a heavy suitcase, stepping out of the airport with an indescribable loneliness. I flagged a taxi and, with a voice hoarse from exhaustion, said, "Take me to Meadow Creek, 12th Street." On the way, traffic was slow, the streets packed with people bundled in coats and scarves, heading to church for Mass. I stared out the taxi window at the warm lights glowing from houses along the road. Church bells rang faintly in the distance, mixed with a choir singing Silent Night somewhere nearby. I smiled, picturing Emily busy in the kitchen, making the mashed potatoes she'd learned from me. When the car stopped at an intersection, I glanced outside and spotted a group of cops directing traffic. Among them, I recognized Jake, a former student from my days teaching Taekwondo at the local community center. He stood tall, confident in his police uniform, but still had that same kind smile. I rolled down the window and shouted, "Jake!" He turned, his eyes lighting up as he recognized me. "Ms. Rose, you're back!" he exclaimed, adjusting his police cap. I smiled, trying to hide my exhaustion. "Yeah, just finished training in Seattle. You still working in Boise?" Jake nodded, his smile bright. "Yep, traffic cop now. You here for Christmas with family?" "With Emily," I said, my heart warming at the mention of my daughter. But then Jake's face froze. His smile faded. A flicker of doubt passed through his eyes, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. A bad feeling sparked in me, like a flame starting to spread. "What's wrong, Jake? Something up?" I asked, lowering my voice. He shook his head, forcing a smile. No, it's nothing, Ms. Rose, just glad you're back." But his eyes betrayed worry. I wanted to press him, but the light turned green. The driver hit the gas, and the car pulled away, leaving Jake watching me from the street, gripping the brim of his cap tightly. As we neared Emily's house, I asked the driver to stop a short distance from the gate. I wanted to surprise them, to see Emily's face when she found me standing at the door. I grabbed my suitcase and walked through the snow-covered path, my boots leaving deep prints. The golden glow from the houses around shone like lit candles. From a distance, I heard a guitar and singing coming from Emily's living room. I smiled, picturing her singing like when she was a kid, standing by my side, belting out Winter Wonderland with that clear voice. I left my suitcase on the step, took a deep breath, and got ready to knock. But then a mocking laugh cut through the air, sharp as a knife. I froze. My hand hovered, not touching the door. Mr. Harold Whitlock's deep, gruff voice boomed clearly. "That's what they call a daughter-in-law? A woman who can't even have kids, 4 miscarriages. Haven't they embarrassed us enough?" His laugh was heavy, dripping with contempt. Then Ryan's voice, cold and cruel, chimed in. "Always faking depression, locking herself in her room to do nothing. If it weren't for my parents, I'd have kicked her out ages ago." Another laugh erupted, followed by the clinking of wine glasses. I heard Abigail, Ryan's sister, her tone venomous. "Yeah, totally useless. A wife who can't have kids, what's she good for? Pretending to be sick just to get coddled. Pathetic." Each word stabbed my heart. I stood there paralyzed, my breath caught in my throat. This was how they treated my Emily, my daughter, who dreamed of a happy family, who poured her heart into every meal for her husband. Now they were humiliating her like this. 4 miscarriages, each one leaving her sobbing until she had no tears left during our phone calls. And now they said she was faking it. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. And that's when I saw Emily, curled up in a wooden chair on the porch, in just a thin blouse, her head bowed, her whole body trembling in the freezing cold. My eyes blurred with tears. My heart stopped. I scooped Emily into my arms. Her body was still shaking, cold as a block of ice. My hands trembled too, not just from the bitter Boise night, but from the rage burning in my chest. Each step toward the Whitlock's door felt like it carried 1,000 pounds, but I didn't stop. I pounded on the wooden door, my knocks firm, drowning out the Christmas music blaring inside. Jingle bells looped over and over, mocking the painful scene I'd just witnessed. No one came to open it. I gritted my teeth and banged harder, like I wanted to knock the door down in one blow. Finally, the door swung open. Mrs. Evelyn stood there, a glass of red wine wobbling in her hand, her lips painted bright red, glossy under the light. The smell of alcohol wafted from her, but her face wore a forced smile, trying to seem polite. "Hey, Ms. Rose, what a surprise," she said, her voice syrupy but fake, like I was an unwelcome guest. "Why didn't you let us know so we could roll out the red carpet?" I locked eyes with her, not bothering to hide my anger. "Let you know?" I growled, each word hissing through my teeth. "If I'd let you know, how would I have seen this? What did you do to my daughter?" I held Emily tighter, feeling her faint breath against my shoulder. Each breath was a reminder I couldn't let this slide. Evelyn raised an eyebrow, glancing at Emily in my arms with a grimace, like she was looking at something annoying. "Emily just wanted some fresh air," she said, her tone soft, but laced with contempt. "Don't make a big deal out of it. It's Christmas. Come in. Don't stand out in the cold." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. Fresh air? While my daughter was practically freezing outside in a thin blouse? Before I could respond, Ryan appeared behind his mother, his shirt unbuttoned, exuding deliberate nonchalance. He held a bottle of wine and shot me a defiant look. "Mom, close the door," he said, his tone dripping with arrogance, chin raised. "Let her stay out there till she gets over it. Who shows up to Christmas dinner acting all fragile to get out of helping?" He let out a mocking chuckle, like he'd said something clever. Those words were another knife, not just in my heart, but in Emily's. I felt her body shrink in my arms, like she wanted to vanish. From the table, Abigail's voice rang out, sharp and venomous. "Exactly. A woman who can't even carry a baby to term? What's she worth? Useless." Her laugh cut like a blade, mixing with the murmurs of others around the table. I heard Abigail's 2 kids, Emily's cousins, run out to the porch, curious. They looked at Emily in my arms, then giggled, whispering to each other, "Aunt Emily's in trouble." Their innocent little voices burned like salt in an open wound. My face flushed with rage. I rammed my shoulder into the door, then kicked it hard. The door flew open, slamming against the wall with a bang that silenced the room. Evelyn's wine sloshed, spilling red stains onto the expensive rug. The Christmas music stopped abruptly, like someone had yanked the speaker's plug. The air in the room turned heavy, suffocating, like all the oxygen had been sucked out. I stepped into the center of the living room, still holding Emily. Each step left a trail of melted snow on the hardwood floor, like marks of rage that couldn't be erased. Every eye was on me. Mr. Harold, his face cold. Evelyn, her fake smile gone. Abigail, her eyes full of disdain. The rest of the family, a mix of shock and annoyance. I felt their hostility in every glance, but I didn't care. Carefully, I settled Emily on the couch, draping my scarf over her shoulders. Her hands were still icy, trembling like the snow's cold still clung to her. I knelt, looking into her eyes, trying to give her some of my strength, though inside I was a storm of fury and pain. The Whitlocks' living room was still brightly lit. The fireplace crackled, but the atmosphere was thick, like everyone was bracing for an explosion. Ryan stepped closer, his face red from the wine, his eyes gleaming with arrogance. He lowered his voice, cold but still smug, like he owned the place. "You don't get to make a scene in my house, Rose," he said, emphasizing my house, like he was reminding me I was an outsider. Ryan stood tall, one hand on his hip, his shirt half unbuttoned in a gesture of contempt. But in his eyes I caught a flicker of uncertainty. He knew I wasn't someone easily intimidated. I shot to my feet, pointing straight at his face, my voice trembling with fury. "No right?" I snapped. "And you? You think you have the right to throw my daughter out into the cold? To let her nearly freeze to death?" My blood boiled in my head. Every word exploded from my chest. "Is that what you call a husband? Is that what you call family?" I glanced around at the banquet table, the plates still steaming, the wine glasses glinting like they were mocking Emily's suffering. Mr. Harold Whitlock rose slowly from the head of the table, adjusting his suit jacket, his deep voice resonating with authority. "That's enough, Ms. Rose," he said. "This is a family matter. A woman who can't bear children needs to learn to endure. That's just how it is." His words hit like a sledgehammer, cold and cruel. I locked eyes with him, seeing the arrogance of a man who'd spent years as a judge, used to controlling everything, but today he'd picked the wrong opponent. I glanced at the table, where the roasted turkey still wafted its aroma, the cornbread stuffing neatly arranged, the wine sparkling under the lights. Then I looked at Emily, still shivering on the couch, her stomach faintly growling like a silent accusation. I couldn't hold back anymore. My voice erupted, sharp and cutting. "So you feast while my daughter's outside in 32-degree weather, no coat, no food? That's what you call tradition? That's what you call humanity?" Evelyn shrugged, her smile icy, like I was blowing things out of proportion. "A woman who can't have kids, even if she eats, is just a waste," she said softly, her voice dripping with disdain. She raised her wine glass and took a sip, as if to show she didn't care one bit about my feelings or Emily's. Abigail chimed in from the table, her tone acidic, rubbing salt in the wound. "Your daughter always uses depression as an excuse to avoid work," she said. "In all this time, has she ever cooked a decent meal for the family? All she does is lie in bed, whining, dragging everyone down." She shook her head, her eyes full of mockery, like Emily was a burden the whole Whitlock family had to bear. Murmurs from the relatives around the table grew louder. Some shook their heads, others snickered, as if they agreed with those venomous words. Every sound, every sidelong glance pierced my chest like another stab. I wanted to flip that fancy table over, to demand justice for my daughter. But then a faint voice came from the couch. Emily, my little girl, had stirred. She tried to sit up, her trembling hands gripping the edge of the couch. "I'm so tired," she stammered, her voice breaking, barely audible. "No one understands." Her words were crushed instantly by Ryan's shout. "Enough," he barked. "Shut up. You've embarrassed me enough already." He stepped toward her, his gaze icy, like he wanted to shatter what little strength she had left. I saw Emily's shoulders slump, her red eyes brimming with tears, and my heart tightened. I stepped in front of her, ready to do whatever it took to protect her. Memories of Emily flooded my mind like an avalanche. I remembered the days she'd call me, sobbing over the phone. Each time she lost a child, the first, the second, the third, the fourth. With every miscarriage, her soul broke into pieces. She'd been a sweet girl who dreamed of a warm home, family dinners with her husband and kids. But the pain over and over had pushed her to the edge of despair. I'd tried to be there for her, even through long-distance calls, but I never imagined the Whitlock family, the ones I trusted, would treat my daughter like this. Ryan, my son-in-law, who I once thought was a decent man, now showed his true face. A cruel bully who cast my daughter out into the cold, treating her like garbage. I was on the verge of losing it. Through the window, I saw Jake standing silently on the porch. Maybe he'd been patrolling the neighborhood, his hard gaze and clenched fist showing he'd heard and witnessed this cruelty. I gave him a slight nod, signaling him not to step in just yet, but inside, his presence was a ray of hope. I knew I wasn't alone. I had a witness, someone who knew the truth. Ryan took another step, pointing at me, dropping the mask of politeness. "I'm warning you, this is my house," he said. "Stay out of it, or things will get worse." He smirked, convinced I'd back down under the Whitlock family's power. He was wrong. I clenched my fists, my knuckles cracking, feeling all the rage I'd bottled up in my life explode in that moment. The air in the room was so thick, it felt like a single spark could set it all ablaze. I locked eyes with Ryan, my voice low but sharp as a knife. "You think you can threaten me? You think you can keep hurting my daughter without paying a price? You're wrong, Ryan. I'm not letting this go." I turned to the whole Whitlock family, from Mr. Harold's cold stare to Evelyn's faint smirk to Abigail's disdainful glare. "All of you," I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. "You're going to pay for what you did to Emily." The Whitlock's living room fell into a terrifying silence, like the air had been sucked out, leaving only a thick tension ready to explode. I placed my hand on Emily's shoulder, feeling her frail frame under the scarf, my voice steady and unwavering. "This isn't a private matter anymore. This is domestic abuse." My words landed like a stone in a still lake, rippling through everyone in the room. Evelyn, still holding her wine glass, let out a mocking laugh, swirling it like she was enjoying a joke. "Abuse?" she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm and arrogance. "We're just teaching her place, Rose. You should thank us for putting up with her this long." Ryan stepped closer, his eyes red from alcohol and rage. He spat his words, like he was chewing each one before letting it out. "She fakes depression. Fakes pain to do nothing. No one's hitting her. We're just sick of her uselessness." He paused, staring at me with a twisted smile. "Teach your daughter again, Rose. Nobody loses 4 pregnancies in a row. Maybe she did it on purpose." Those words were like a razor blade. They didn't just cut my heart. They tore open Emily's unhealed wounds. I heard her breath catch, like she'd been punched in the chest. 4 miscarriages. 4 times she called me, sobbing, her voice broken, saying she'd lost the children she could never hold. Each time, I could only clutch the phone, helpless from afar, trying to comfort her with empty words. And now Ryan dared to stand in front of me and say she'd done it on purpose. I clenched my fist so hard my nails dug into my palm, blood rushing to my face. He'd crossed a line I couldn't forgive. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket. My hand shook, but I quickly dialed the nearest police station. "I'm calling the cops," I said, my voice cold as ice, though inside I was a hurricane. "A report will be filed. You'll answer to the law." I emphasized each word like I was carving them into the air, making sure everyone knew I wasn't bluffing. Ryan froze. The wine bottle slipped from his hand, clattering onto the hardwood floor, red wine staining the expensive rug. Panic flashed in his eyes, though he tried to regain his air of superiority. "You wouldn't dare!" he shouted, but his voice wavered, like he hadn't expected me to go this far. Mr. Harold, who'd been watching with a cold expression, stepped forward, adjusting his tie, his deep, gravelly voice booming with authority. "You have no idea who you're challenging, Rose," he said. "I've spent my life on the judge's bench. I've seen the worst this world has to offer. You think a phone call will make us tremble?" His eyes were sharp as knives, reminding me the Whitlock family wasn't easily shaken. But I didn't back down. I'd seen my daughter shivering in the cold, and nothing, not even Mr. Harold's power, would silence me. Abigail, from the table, crossed her arms and let out a mocking smile. "Go ahead, make the call, Ms. Rose," she said, her tone taunting. "Let's see who they believe, a crazy old lady or a respected family like ours. You think the police will side with you?" Her venomous laugh rang out, confident I'd fail. Emily, still on the couch, tugged at my sleeve, her voice trembling in a whisper. "Mom, please don't do it. I just want peace." Her red eyes, full of fear, seemed to say she was terrified things would get worse. I looked at her, my heart aching. I knew she was scared of the Whitlocks' retaliation, of more humiliation piling on, but I also knew if I stopped now, Emily would be trapped in this pain forever. I squeezed her hand tightly, trying to pass her some of my courage. "You don't have to be afraid," I said softly but firmly. "I'll protect you, I promise." I lifted her in my arms, snow from her clothes falling onto the rug like pieces of a shattered dream. I ignored the Whitlocks' scornful glares and their muttered threats. All I knew was I had to get her out of that place, out of that cage of cruelty she'd been locked in for too long. As I turned toward the door, I saw Jake through the foggy glass, standing on the porch. His hand rested on his radio, his eyes burning with a hidden fire, ready to act at any moment. I gave him a slight nod, enough to let him know I was ready for the fight. Jake nodded back firmly, his hand still gripping the radio like a promise he'd stand by me. I walked out without looking back. Behind me, I heard Evelyn yelling at the housekeeper to clean the spilled wine on the rug. I heard Ryan slam his hand on the table, muttering a curse. Then Mr. Harold's deep, angry voice echoed as he called someone on the phone. All those sounds were like arrows piercing my back. But I didn't care. I took Emily to my small apartment near the National Training Center, where I'd lived for years as a coach. It wasn't fancy. Just a living room with an old couch, a simple kitchen in the corner, and a few family photos on the wall. But to me, it was a safe place where I could shield my girl from the Whitlocks' insults and the cruel cold. I carried Emily to her room and gently settled her on the bed. She was still shivering, though wrapped in my thick coat. I dug through the closet for an old sweater, put it on her, then made a mug of hot cocoa, its sweet aroma filling the chilly air. "Drink this, sweetheart," I whispered, placing the mug in her hands. But she just stared at it, her eyes empty, like she didn't believe she deserved even a bit of warmth. My phone rang, cutting through my thoughts. It was Jake. His voice was deep and steady. "Ms. Rose, I just filed the initial report at the station, but the Whitlocks won't go down easy. They've got influence, you know that. I'm ready to testify as a witness if you need me." I felt the determination in his tone, like a small flame that never dies. Jake, my old student, the one who once stood in the dojo with bright eyes, was now by my side in a different kind of fight. "Help me prepare, Jake," I said, my voice brief but full of gratitude. "This could be a long battle." He replied with a simple, "I got it, Coach. I'm here." The next morning, I took Emily to a therapist in downtown Boise. Dr. Linda Carter, an older woman with a kind gaze, welcomed us into a cozy office. After talking with Emily, she looked at me, her voice heavy and sad. "She's suffering from severe depression, Ms. Rose. 4 miscarriages combined with constant insults from her in-laws have crushed her confidence. She needs rest, treatment, and above all, to feel safe." I nodded, my heart tightening. I knew Emily wasn't okay, but hearing it from the therapist felt like another stab. I looked at her, curled up in the chair, her hands clasped tightly, and blamed myself for not being there sooner. That afternoon, Jake stopped by the apartment, out of his police uniform, carrying a bag of fruit and some old cookbooks. He set them in front of Emily, hesitating. "I know you like cooking," he said. "Thought maybe starting small, like a pie or some chicken noodle soup, might make you feel better." His voice was gentle, but I saw the worry in his eyes. Emily lowered her head, clutching the edge of her blouse, and murmured, "Thanks, but I don't think I can do anything anymore." Her words pierced my chest like a needle. Jake's face fell for a moment, but he didn't push her, just nodded quietly. He left the bag on the table and turned to me. "Ms. Rose, whatever you need, just say it. I've got your back." That night, after Emily was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table under the dim light, surrounded by papers. I heard a noise outside, then saw a thick envelope slide under the door, silent as a quiet threat. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note, the letters messy. "Don't mess with the Whitlock family if you don't want to end up as miserable as your daughter. Give up." My blood boiled as I read it. I crumpled the paper and threw it hard into the trash, the sound breaking the silence. That threat didn't scare me. It only fueled me. They thought I'd back down. They were wrong. That same night, I started organizing all the proof of money I'd sent Emily over the years, bank receipts, messages with my notes of love. Each was evidence I'd always tried to support her, even though Ryan and his family had squandered most of it. Every paper was a memory. The times Emily called, her voice shaky, saying she wanted to buy something for the house, only for Ryan to tell her it wasn't needed. I gripped the pen so hard it nearly snapped. I'd trusted Ryan. I thought he'd take care of my daughter, but he only saw her as a tool, and when she stopped being useful, he discarded her without mercy. Emily woke up in the middle of the night. She stumbled out of her room, legs trembling, and saw me at the table, buried in papers, my eyes tired but full of fear. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm scared. I'm scared they'll do something to you." I looked up, saw her red eyes, and felt my heart being squeezed. I stood, walked to her and hugged her, feeling her fragile body in my arms. "You don't have to be afraid," I said firmly, though inside I was a knot of nerves. "From now on, I'm the one who will protect you from everything. I promise." I took Emily back to bed, staying by her side until she fell asleep. But I couldn't sleep. I returned to the kitchen table, kept sorting papers, and made a list of what needed to be done. I called an old lawyer friend who'd helped me with a case tied to the Taekwondo team. He promised to look into it, but warned me, "The Whitlocks have a lot of pull in Boise, Ms. Rose. They know people in the courts. Get ready for a long fight." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "I know," I said, "but I'm not stopping." The weeks preparing the case felt like an endless nightmare. Every night, under the dim lamp in my small apartment, I reviewed page after page, rereading every bank receipt, every medical report about Emily. Those cold numbers and letters were proof of my love for my daughter, but also a painful reminder of everything she'd suffered. Finally, the first day of the trial came, and I felt like I was stepping onto a Taekwondo mat. Emily and I entered the Boise courthouse. The morning chills seeped through my thick coat. I held her hand, feeling her icy fingers tremble in my palm. Her eyes were red, with dark circles showing sleepless nights. She kept her head down, like she wanted to hide from the stares. I stood tall, trying to be her rock, though inside I was just as shaken. "I'm here," I whispered, squeezing her hand gently. She nodded weakly, but her empty eyes showed she'd given up the fight long ago. The Whitlock family was already there, early. Ryan, in a sharp gray suit, carried himself like a confident lawyer. Before the trial, he sat, adjusted his tie, and shot us a scornful glance. Next to him was Mr. Harold, walking slowly but with a gaze sharp as a blade. He flashed a confident smile, like he already knew the outcome. In the family row, Evelyn and Abigail sat primly, dressed elegantly, whispering occasionally, throwing us looks. I felt their hostility in every gesture, but I forced myself to stay calm, reminding myself today wasn't my fight. It was Emily's. Jake was there too, sitting in the spectator section in his police uniform. He gave me a slight nod, his steady gaze like a promise he wouldn't abandon us. His presence made me feel less alone, like I had an ally in this battle. I nodded back, silently thanking him for being there, from that terrifying Christmas Eve to this day. The trial began. My lawyer, Mr. James, stood and presented each piece of evidence clearly. He showed the bank transfers I'd sent Emily over the years, proving I'd always supported her, though most of that money ended up in Ryan's hands. He also presented Emily's medical records with detailed notes from the therapist about her depression. After 4 miscarriages and constant insults from her husband's family, Emily didn't just suffer physically, she was emotionally destroyed, James said, his voice thick with emotion. They treated her like an outsider in her own home. I looked at Emily, her head bowed, hands clasped tightly like she was trying to hold in the pain. I wanted to stand and hug her, but I knew I had to stay strong and let the lawyer do his job. Then the young lawyers for the Whitlock family stood up, and I felt injustice creeping into the courtroom. One of them, in a sleek black suit, spoke with a commanding voice. Emily's just faking illness to be coddled. The Whitlock family gave her everything. Shelter, food, every need met. But she didn't hold up her end. She failed as a wife. Those words slapped me across the face. Faking? Coddled? I clenched my fists so hard I felt my blood boil. They called a witness, Mrs. Martha, the Whitlock's former housekeeper. She took the stand, eyes darting, voice shaky. Mrs. Emily was lazy, she said. She'd lock herself in her room all day, neglecting the house. I had to do everything, cooking, cleaning. I couldn't believe my ears. Emily, the same woman who lovingly prepared every meal, who made homemade pies to please the whole family, now branded as lazy. I shot to my feet, unable to hold back. You're lying. Emily was never like that. The judge, a middle-aged man with a stern face, slammed his gavel and said coldly, "Silence, please. This is a courtroom." I sat back down, my heart racing, feeling like I couldn't breathe. I glanced at Mr. Harold Whitlock. He smiled, a subtle, smug nod to the judge. An invisible thread between them chilled my skin. Something wasn't right. I felt it clearly. They'd planned this day, and I was just a pawn in their chess game. Emily stayed hunched over, her trembling hands gripping the chair's edge. I saw Jake in the back row, jaw clenched, fists tight, like he was fighting to contain his own fury. Mr. James, our lawyer, pressed on, his voice steady. We'd like to present key evidence, a recording from Christmas Eve capturing the Whitlock family's insults and psychological abuse toward Emily. He played the audio Jake had secretly recorded. Ryan's voice boomed, cold and cruel. She's just faking depression to dodge her duties. Then Evelyn's, a woman who can't have kids, even if she eats well, is useless. And Abigail's, sarcastic. She can't even manage to give birth. The courtroom fell silent, only faint whispers breaking through. I looked at Emily, saw her shrink, as if those words stabbed her all over again. But the Whitlock's lawyer jumped up, objecting. That recording's illegal, made without consent. It violates privacy rights. The judge nodded, his voice dry. The recording is inadmissible. I felt the ground open beneath me, clutching the chair to keep from collapsing. The recording, the clearest proof of the Whitlock's cruelty, tossed out on a technicality. Murmurs filled the room. Some gasped in disbelief, others shook their heads, confused. I looked at Jake, his head bowed, fists trembling on his knees. Emily hid her face in her hands, shoulders shaking as she fought back tears. I wanted to lose it, to rush the judge's bench and demand justice, but I knew in that room justice wasn't on our side. Mr. Harold sat there, his gaze calm but arrogant, like he'd known this would happen. I squeezed Emily's hand, trying to give her strength, though I felt defeated myself. After a week of grueling trial days, the final verdict came. I sat in the Boise courthouse, holding Emily's hand, her cold, trembling fingers in mine. All week, I'd tried to stay strong, but every night, back at my small apartment, my heart ached with anguish and helplessness. Emily sat beside me, eyes red from sleepless nights, her face pale like life had been drained from her. I gripped her hand, trying to pass her some courage, though I was trembling too. Ryan strode into the room, adjusting his tie like it was just another day. Evelyn, his mother, smoothed her dress and sat upright, lips painted deep red, a confident smile on her face like she already knew the outcome. Abigail, in a flashy outfit, shot us a scornful look. Mr. Harold stood behind Ryan, imposing, his gaze hard, reminding us the Whitlock family always had everything under control. Jake was in the spectator section, still in his police uniform. His eyes were steady, but couldn't hide his worry. He gave me a slight nod, a silent promise he'd be there no matter what. I returned a grateful look, comforted by his presence. But when the judge, a middle-aged man with an expressionless face, entered, a chill ran down my spine. The air grew heavy, like everyone braced for an inevitable verdict. The judge spoke, his voice dry and firm. The court grants the divorce request of the plaintiff, Emily Harper Larson, and the defendant, Ryan Whitlock. Those words sparked a ray of hope inside me. Emily broke into silent tears, tears streaming down her cheeks. I squeezed her hand, urging her to stay calm and listen. The divorce was what I wanted for Emily, a chance to escape the Whitlocks' cruel cage, but I knew the ruling wasn't the end. The judge continued, his voice monotonous, like reading a report. However, the court does not recognize the claims of domestic abuse due to insufficient legal evidence. As for assets, since Ryan Whitlock contributed more to the marriage's upkeep, the court awards him the majority of shared property. Those words hit like a hammer to my chest. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. No recognition of domestic abuse? Insufficient evidence? I remembered the Christmas Eve recording, Ryan, Evelyn, and Abigail's cruel words, discarded over a technicality. I thought of Emily's medical records, the bank receipts, all twisted by the Whitlocks' lawyers into evidence against us. Then it hit me. Mr. Harold, with his past as a judge and deep ties in the judicial system, had rigged it. I looked at him, saw him tilt his head slightly, that smug smile still on his lips. It was all fixed. They'd manipulated the ruling, and Emily and I were just pawns in their game. I couldn't hold back anymore. I shot to my feet, my voice breaking with rage and pain. "This is so unfair! This isn't justice!" My shout echoed, silencing the room. Emily grabbed my hand, eyes wide with panic, but I didn't stop. "You saw how they treated my daughter. You heard what she endured, and you still dare say there was no abuse? You dare take everything from her?" A guard approached, his voice firm. "Ma'am, please sit down, or I'll have to ask you to leave." I glared at him, then at the judge, who sat there, face blank, like my words meant nothing. I sat, hands trembling, feeling the world crumble beneath me. Ryan turned, locked eyes with me, and flashed a mocking smile, adjusting his tie like he'd won a grand victory. Evelyn and Abigail nudged each other, giggling under their breath, making sure I heard. That laughter was a knife plunging deep into my heart. Mr. Harold nodded slowly, his gaze calm, like this was just another case he'd pulled strings on. I looked at them all, one by one, my blood boiling. They hadn't just stolen Emily's justice. They'd stolen my faith in a system I once thought was fair. Emily covered her face with her hands, her body shaking, her muffled sobs tearing me apart. I wanted to hug her, tell her everything would be okay, but no words came. The judge's words echoed in my head like a sentence, not just for Emily, but for me. Jake, in the back, stood abruptly glaring at the Whitlocks. I saw veins bulging in his arms, fists clenched, like he was holding back a storm of rage. I signaled him to stay calm, though I wanted to scream and break everything in that room. The judge slammed his gavel, his voice sharp. "Order! The session is over. Everyone may leave." The gavel's sound was a final period, but for me, it was the start of a new pain. People began to rise, voices murmuring, papers shuffling. But I stayed, holding Emily tightly, her trembling shoulders and sobs breaking me inside. I wanted to comfort her, but my throat closed, like words were useless against this pain. The unjust ruling didn't just strip Emily of assets. It took the last shred of my belief that the system would protect her. Ryan sauntered over, his posture smug, like he'd won a major victory. He leaned close to my ear, whispering mockingly, "See, Rose? I told you. Don't fight me. You're just a useless old woman." He flashed a crooked smile, eyes gleaming with triumph, then turned to leave, like Emily and I weren't worth his time. His words were gasoline on the fire of my rage. My blood surged, veins pulsing. I clenched my fist so hard it hurt, my body taut like a drawn bow, ready to snap. I wanted to lunge, to land a punch on that arrogant face, to pay him back for everything he'd done to my daughter. After years as a Taekwondo coach, I'd learned restraint, but in that moment, all my barriers crumbled. I took a step forward, heart pounding, ready to do something I'd regret. But Jake rushed in front of me, eyes blazing, lips tight, fist clenched like he was about to unleash it on Ryan. I saw my own fury in him, an uncontainable outrage at the injustice. The courtroom buzzed, voices rose. Are they going to fight? A cop throwing punches in court? Some pulled out phones, camera flashes lighting up the tension. A journalist in the corner raised his camera, eyes hungry for a scandal. Ryan turned, startled for a moment, but quickly regained his defiance. He smirked coldly. Go ahead, hit me. I'll make sure you lose everything. Who do you think you are? Just a low-life cop. He stepped closer, taunting, certain Jake wouldn't dare touch him. Jake's fist trembled, his breathing heavy, eyes red. I knew he could do something irreversible. Suddenly, Emily broke free from my arm, ran to Jake, and clung to his arm, sobbing, her voice broken. No, please, don't do it. I don't want you or Mom to become violent like him. I just want peace. I just want to keep living. Her cry tore through the air, silencing the room. I saw tears stream down Emily's face, her thin hands gripping Jake like he was her last anchor. Jake froze, breathing hard, his fiery eyes slowly dimming. His fist trembled, rigid for a moment, then slowly loosened, dropping to his side. He bowed his head, lips tight, fighting to contain the rage consuming him. Camera clicks echoed, flashes highlighting Emily clinging to Jake, Ryan standing smugly in front. Some in the room, maybe unaware of the case, began to sob. A soft murmur of crying rose, like Emily's pain had pierced them. I looked around. A woman wiping tears, a man shaking his head in sorrow. But the Whitlocks stood unmoved. Evelyn and Abigail whispered to each other, cold smiles on their lips. Mr. Harold nodded slightly, his authoritative air intact, like everything was still under his control. The judge slammed his gavel, his voice cold. Order! If this disruption continues, I'll have guards clear the room. The gavel sound was a warning, snapping everyone back to reality. I stepped forward, took Emily, and hugged her tightly. She kept crying, her body trembling in my arms like a lost child. Jake stood beside us, head bowed, lips tight, like he blamed himself for not doing more. I placed a hand on his shoulder, nodding gently, letting him know I understood and was grateful he was there. Ryan adjusted his tie, turned, and walked off, his steps heavy with triumph. Evelyn and Abigail followed, their cold laughter another knife in my chest. The room slowly emptied, leaving just me, Emily, and Jake, 3 people sharing the same bitter lump in our throats. I hugged Emily tighter, feeling her weak breath against my shoulder. Mom, she whispered, voice breaking. I don't want to fight anymore. I'm tired. Can we just go home? Those words tore my heart apart. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, that I'd keep fighting, but my throat closed and no words came. I led Emily out of the courtroom, Jake walking silently beside us, his gaze steady. The faint Boise sunlight streamed through the windows, but it couldn't warm my heart. I knew today's ruling wasn't just a loss. It was a declaration of war. The Whitlocks may have won in court, but I wouldn't let them win in Emily's life. I looked at her, her red eyes holding a tiny spark, like a flicker of hope, however small. For that spark, I swore I wouldn't give up. In the days after the trial, Boise seemed to stir with an undercurrent. Local news started talking. Bold headlines hit the front pages. Whitlock trial, justice bought. Reading those words, my heart pounded, like they voiced our pain, Emily's and mine. On social media, the video of Emily clinging to Jake in the courtroom spread fast. The image of my daughter, eyes red, voice breaking, begging Jake not to become violent, touched many hearts. Comments flooded with outrage. The Whitlocks think they can control everything. Emily deserves better than this." Sitting in our small apartment, reading those words, I felt a bit of comfort, though the court had turned its back on us. The community's voice was starting to side with Emily. The Whitlocks, despite their legal win, began to feel the cost. I heard Mr. Harold's old colleagues whispered behind his back rumors of how he'd used his influence to bend justice. Ryan, dubbed the lawyer of injustice, became a target of online criticism. The prestige the family flaunted was crumbling like a sandcastle swept by waves. I didn't revel in it, but I felt a sliver of justice, not from the courts, but from the people's voice. I brought Emily to live with me in my small apartment, lit by the warm yellow glow of lamps, family photos on the walls. Each morning, I got up early to make her breakfast, sometimes pancakes with maple syrup, other times just scrambled eggs with toast. Emily sat slowly at the table, cradling a mug of hot tea, staring out the window where faint sunlight slipped between Boise's rooftops. Some days, I saw silent tears roll down her cheeks like raindrops. But I knew slowly Emily was healing. Each day, she spoke a little more, her eyes less empty than before. I didn't push her. I just stayed by her side, a mother ready to shield her daughter from any storm. Jake became a vital part of our lives. He'd stop by, sometimes with a small bouquet of poinsettias, other times with donuts from the corner bakery. Each visit lit Emily up a little, like his presence was medicine for her soul. One afternoon, Jake, a bit nervous, handed Emily a small box. Inside was a keychain shaped like a taekwondo uniform, the same symbol I'd taught him and my other students. "You don't have to be strong right away," he said, his voice soft but firm, "but you can start over, little by little, like Ms. Rose did." Emily took the keychain, frozen, her eyes shining with emotion. She pressed her lips, holding back tears, then nodded slowly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice small but full of feeling. I watched from a distance, silent, feeling a weight lift off my chest. For years, Emily had been belittled, called useless. Now someone saw her true worth, valued her not for what she could do, but for who she was. I turned away, wiping a tear from my cheek, not wanting Emily to see me vulnerable. One evening, as the sunset bathed the apartment in gold, Emily sat across from Jake on the couch. Her head was bowed, hands twisting the edge of her sweater, voice trembling. "Jake, I might never be able to have kids, if that disappoints you." She stopped, like she feared those words would ruin everything. I was in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes, but my heart stopped, waiting for Jake's reply. He smiled, a warm, steady smile, took her hands, and looked her in the eyes. "I don't need that, Emily. You're already my family." Those words were a gust of warm air, melting the cold lingering in my chest. I heard them with a lump in my throat, eyes blurring. For years, Emily had been humiliated, treated as a failed wife for not having children. Now someone told her she was enough, that she deserved love just for being herself. I turned my face, letting tears fall silently, my heart full of gratitude too big for words. Easter came, and I took Emily by the hand to walk through Boise's main square, like when she was a little girl, skipping happily down lit-up streets. The square was alive with children's laughter and the smell of fresh-baked pies from food stalls. Emily wore a light sweater, her hair tied up, and for the first time in months, I saw her smile, a radiant spring sun smile. "Mom," she said softly, "I miss these days. I miss when you taught me to make apple pie, when you told me about your taekwondo matches." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "I miss them too, sweetheart, and I'll always be here to make more memories with you." As we sat on a wooden bench watching kids play by the fountain, a simple but profound truth hit me. Justice in courtrooms can be twisted, bought by power and money, but the justice of the heart, love, respect, resilience, no one can touch that. Emily, though she'd lost so much, was finding herself day by day, step by step. And I, A mother who once felt powerless now knew my greatest strength wasn't in punches thrown in the ring, but in my love for my daughter. Jake showed up with a bag of warm churros, handed one to Emily, and they laughed and chatted like old friends. I watched, my heart full of hope. Emily might never forget the scars the Whitlocks left, but she was learning to move forward, to love herself, to open up to those who truly valued her. And me, at 65, after fighting so many battles, I knew the fight for Emily's happiness was the most meaningful of all. This story is fictional, but draws on real-life experiences. Names and places have been changed to protect those involved. We share it not to judge, but in hopes someone will pause and think about how many mothers suffer silently in their own homes. I'm genuinely curious. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you stay silent for peace, or would you dare to face it all to reclaim your voice? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light someone's path. God always blesses. I firmly believe courage leads to brighter days. In the meantime, at the end of the video, I've linked 2 of the channel's most loved stories. They'll surprise you, I promise. Thanks for staying until the end.